And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Buckeye Buggs. That guy over there is the wild man, Chris Wilds. And we're back with another Big Ten preview. This one, the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. And you got to say it like that, Chris, okay? You got to say it
Are you doing your best Vince McMahon
yeah, you got
imitation
to
right
say it
now?
like Vince McMahon. Rutgers football. Makes it more intimidating that way because
That's the only thing intimidating about
they
Rutgers right now.
they haven't been very intimidating since they joined the Big Ten, man. Hey, but they got their main squeeze back, right?
Yes, they did.
It's year number 14 under Greg Schiano, but I think 3 since he went back
Mhm.
to Piscataway, New Jersey, the birthplace of college football and Rutgers.
You're going to do that all night, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I promise I won't. I won't. There's really nothing. This might be my least favorite preview because even when we preview Northwestern this year, at least we've got something interesting to talk about.
Sick and twisted, but interesting.
Yes, exactly. So let's dive in. Let's not waste any more time, everybody. All right. Last season, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights were 4-8. They were 1-8 in Big Ten play. Yes, season number 14 under Greg Schiano since he's gone back to Piscataway, New Jersey. Home field is SHI Stadium. Capacity 52,454. They have an all-time record of 662 wins, 679 losses, and 42 ties for a winning percentage of 494. Here's what's interesting. They are 6-5 in bowl games. They do have one conference title, that conference title being in the defunct Big East. But they actually have won more bowl games in the past, what was it, since the year 2000 than the team up
Team up
north.
north, yeah.
Yeah, just a little
But
little
then
fact.
again, what team hasn't?
Ooh, there. I'm sure there's a couple. Indiana.
Nebraska?
Oh, ouch. All right. Last year, they went on the road against Boston College and actually won that game 23-21 to start the year. They destroyed Wagner 66-7. They won at Temple again in a close one, 16-14. And then they went on a losing streak to start off the Big Ten play against Iowa, Ohio State, Nebraska. They did defeat the Hoosiers 24-17. And then they finished the year on a 5-game losing streak. Minnesota, that team up north, Michigan State, Penn State, and Maryland. Last year, Vegas said 4 wins for them. Chris, you said I'll go with what Vegas thinks. Give them 4. I said, I think they only get the 3. I was wrong. Chris, you were right. You didn't win any money though, because it was right on 4 games for them last season. Chris, your overall thoughts from Rutgers football in 2022?
You know, it's tough to be the doormat of the East.
Oh,
These guys, these guys are probably doing cartwheels at the thought at the end of the divisions.
yeah,
Because let me tell you, to every year have to face Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Then we've had a couple decent years out of Michigan State. Maryland's been up and coming. It's like you can hand us 5 losses before the schedule even gets started.
yeah. So interesting
You know?
fact, Chris. Yeah, interesting fact. Since Greg Schiano's been back at Rutgers, um, the 3 seasons he's been there against the big 3 in the East, team up north, Ohio State and Penn State, he's 0-9, and the average score in those games is 42-15.
Yeah.
Yikes!
Yeah.
Yikes!
I mean, that's nobody, as I said, is going to be happier to see conferences end than Greg Schiano and the Rutgers fan base because I'll tell you, it has been brutal.
It
Um,
has.
you know, I don't know what to think of Rutgers at this point, Eric. I had a lot of hopes when Schiano went back. I mean, New Jersey's great recruiting area, rich in talent there. Um, It should, he's gotten some decent prospects,
He
but
has recruited the
it's
state of New
just
Jersey
not
better.
it's just not translating onto the field right now.
It's not against the big boys. You're right. It's not, and it's not going to, because the top echelon from the DMC and from the state of New Jersey are still going to go to the big boys. They're still
Yeah,
going to go to Ohio
Ohio
State. They're
State.
still going to go to Penn State. They're still going to go to Virginia Tech. They're still going to go to Clemson. They're still going to go to Maryland before they go to Rutgers. And so, even though he's trying to build it by getting the local guys and the local talent from the state of New Jersey, um, it's going to be difficult because it's just not a hotbed of recruiting. I mean, there are some good guys who come out of there. Ohio
Mhm.
State's had some good guys from New York, New Jersey, but it's just not a Florida, a Georgia, a
But you
California.
know what? It's not translating even against teams in the West, Eric. I mean, yeah, they beat Indiana in a closer than it should have been game. But the fact is, they beat a very bad, very, very bad Indiana team by one touchdown. Other than that, they didn't have a win in the Big Ten. So,
They're still a Big East team.
yeah, that's
I
the
mean, look
problem.
look who their wins were against. Boston College, Temple, like they're still a Big East team and they're not a Big 10 team
That may
yet.
not that may not bode well for Virginia Tech.
That's true. All right, guys, let's go ahead and turn it over to our big banter expert from Rutgers from the What's Chopping podcast. It's Alec. We're going to bring him in and let him talk about the program that he loves. And welcome back to the OHL podcast, everybody. And as you can see, we are joined by our guest, Alec Krauthamel from the What's Choppin' podcast. Before we get any further, Alec, where'd you come up with that name, man? I know it's from, hey, keep chopping. It's a Rutgers thing. I get it, but that's pretty creative.
Yeah. So obviously, like you said, the chopping, keep chopping. That's the mantra for Greg Schiano. And then obviously there's also the song "What's Poppin'" by Jack Harlow. So I thought, why not combine the two and make it a fun little name.
There you go. See the little
Nice.
insight right there. I like it. I was gonna ask you when you first came on, what's chopping? But I thought that might be a little too much there. But hey, welcome to the Big Banter family, my man. Um, Another new guy, new podcast, and just let me toot your horn for a minute. Your first podcast was sensational. You flew solo, number one, which is not easy to do in this. You didn't do ums and whats, and I mean you didn't stammer. My first time going solo, the very first time I tried to do this, I went back and listened to it about a couple years ago, and I wanted to shoot myself. It was terrible. It was so bad. And you just blew that out of the water. So congratulations, dude. You're gonna be good at this, my man.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I've got experience in being with the college radio at Rutgers and all that. So yeah, I'm excited to do some more. But thank you.
That makes sense. All right, you've got a career in this thing. Beautiful. Hopefully Rutgers football will give you some good content this year to talk about. How about that, right?
Oh
Let's
yeah, let's hope so.
let's start with that, all right? Number 1, Greg Schiano, he was our defensive coordinator at Ohio State for a few years. He is a Rutgers man through and through. How excited were you 3 years ago when he decided to come back home?
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. He's a Rutgers guy through and through, and I thought that, and I think everyone else in the fan base did too, or at least most of the people, is that he was pretty much the only guy for the job and the right guy for the job. I mean, there was rumors that the negotiations for contract were falling through in that coaching search, and there was basically almost a full blown mutiny on campus. So it was pretty much Shiano or bust in that coaching search, and boy, I think I'm glad, and I think everyone else is glad that it worked out the way it did.
Mhm.
So, Alec, gotta ask, can you give us a little bit of an overview of this year's team and what are your expectations for the Scarlet Knights this season?
I think I'm expecting improvement, which I mean is pretty basic. But last year was a disappointment. They only won 4 games, and the offense did not look good. They let go of Sean Gleason, the offensive coordinator, and they brought in Kirk Shiraka from Minnesota. So I think we're expecting improvement on the offensive end, especially in terms of quarterback play as well. Gavin Wimstead's hoping to take a big step up in his third year as a Scarlet Knight. And the defense is going to, I think, continue its upwards trajectory under defensive coordinator Joe Harris-Simiak, also from Minnesota. We're kind of stealing from Minnesota here, but I'm expecting improvement, and I think the key to this team is going to be the passing attack. They brought in two transfers from lower levels at wide receiver, at three actually in the whole passing attack. An FCS tight end out of Maine, Sean Bauman, an FCS wide receiver in Nassim Brantley from Western Illinois, and Jaquay Jackson, a wide receiver from D2 California University in Pennsylvania. It's a little bit confusing, but yeah, I think there's a lot of expectations that this will be an improved team, especially with the defensive floor that was already set last year. It looked really good to start out, and an improved offense, I think, will lead to either close to or making a bowl this year.
It's interesting you brought those things up. Chris and I have, as we've been poring over, the statistics and looking at the different players and projections and things like that. I think you're dead on what we're thinking as well. But that being said, what do you think the strength of this team will be? And on the flip side, on the other side of the coin, what is the weakness that you're worried is going to get exploited this year?
I think the strength, at least over the whole team, I think, at least in my mind, is a tie between the running back room and the defensive line room. They're both extremely deep with a lot of talent pretty much everywhere in those positions. On the running back side, you got Sam Brown, who was a breakout freshman last year, but suffered a season ending injury after the Indiana game. You got Kyle Monangai, who started in his place, and even before he broke out, proven talent there. Aaron Young is a great receiving back. He comes back for his senior year. So that three, plus other guys that are also talented as well, that lead a deep running back room for the Scarlet Knights. And then on the defensive line, they got guys on the edge and on the interior, mainly Aaron Lewis, who in the Big Banter defensive line rankings that came out today, he was ranked, I believe, 12th. So he's definitely a guy to look out for. There was a stat that I brought up in my episode, was that there were only two guys last year that ranked in the top, or that ranked at least 85 in PFF in terms of pass rushing and run defense, and that was Will Anderson and Aaron Lewis. So that's pretty high praise. And I think not only with Aaron Lewis, there's other guys, Kenny Fletcher, Wesley Bailey, other guys around him that makes this unit very strong and probably the best unit along with the running back room. As for the weakness, I think it's probably either the quarterback or the offensive line. The quarterback room as a whole, I mean, not even just the starter, Kevin Wimstead, who struggled with injury and accuracy issues last year. And then his backup, Evan Simon, was okay, especially considering he was supposed to be the third string quarterback coming into the season. He performed admirably under the circumstances, but there's definitely a lot to be desired. And they didn't add a quarterback from the transfer portal this year. The only addition they made was getting Ajani Shepherd out of Iona Prep as a freshman this year, and he's probably not going to play all that much as a true freshman. And the offensive line has also struggled in years past. They brought in a new offensive line coach, and Pat Flaherty, who has been around for decades. I believe he spent almost 40 years coaching offensive line. But yeah, I think those are the biggest strengths and weaknesses on the team coming into the year.
Very well, very well, Chris.
Okay, Alec, we've talked strength and weakness. We've talked about expectations. So hard numbers, a floor and a ceiling for this team.
I think the floor it's not a very big floor and ceiling with this team. I think the floor is 4-8, much like last year. If things don't go their way, they lose some games they shouldn't, which can always happen. And I think the ceiling is, I don't want to say 7-5. I'm going to say 6-6 is their ceiling. It's not a very big difference between the floor and ceiling, but in terms of perception on the season, going 4-8 versus 6-6 is a pretty big difference. And the schedule shapes up so that they can get those 6 wins, especially with some things that have been happening around the Big Ten, such as that season opening game against Northwestern got much more, I guess, interesting for lack of a better term.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to win that one. I don't know that Northwestern wins a game this year. I don't
I don't
know.
know either.
I don't know when they'll win a game again. I really think that program is in shambles right now. Who
One, as we
knows?
record this, Eric, like we were talking before this went on, it just keeps getting worse.
It does. It It
because
really,
now it's become not just a football program problem; it's becoming a university athletic department wide problem.
yeah, yeah. I I I don't want to say this, but I could see a scenario where that first game, I don't know that it'd be hard pressed to cancel the thing. Like you don't want to see that happen, but like I don't know at this point how much deeper this thing can go, how much worse can it get. But you should win that game. And there's some winnable games on this schedule, definitely. Um, that being said, I want to project out a little bit. Let's take a look at next year. We go to 16 teams in the Big Ten. There's no longer the East in the West. As Chris and I talked at the beginning of this episode before you joined Alec, Rutgers in the last 3 years under Shiano are 0-9 against the Big Three in the East, and the scores have been close. So it's really hard if you're Rutgers, if you're a Rutgers fan or if you're Greg Schiano, to really look at your schedule and think, well, we've got to find 6 wins out of 9 games now, because that's how it's been. The elimination of divisions, I assume you're in favor of that.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it yourself. Against the strength of the Big Ten, which is the Big Ten East, Rutgers has not fared well. So yeah, eliminating divisions. I mean, getting some more of those maybe lesser-ish opponents in the Big Ten West. More on the schedule. I've seen the 2024 and 2025 schedule. The Big Ten did not do us very many favors. I believe in 2024 we play the entirety of the Big Ten East except for Indiana. So it's a little bit of a rocky road to start out. But yeah, in the long run, I'm definitely in favor of it.
Would you be follow up question? Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to jump in line there with
But
you, but I got follow up with that. As a Rutgers fan, would you be in favor of looking for another conference, or are you like, heck no, I want to be here?
No, I would say I'm fully in support of staying in the Big Ten because even outside of football, I mean, even outside of sports in general, there's so much to be proud of in the Big Ten in terms of the academics and the research group that all the Big Ten schools are in, and the fact that it feels like the Big Ten is the most stable of pretty much any conference out there in terms of any realignment. It seems like more schools are going to come in rather than leave, so it feels
Hmm.
to be a part of that, and definitely am in favor of staying in it.
Okay. What if the Big East all of a sudden reappeared?
With all
Oh,
the teams that were in it before.
yeah. Like it just everybody gets together and they're all like, "Hey, let's have a reunion tour, right? Let's they're like the Rolling Stones of college football. Let's do this one more time, right? Would you be
Uh,
like, "Hey, let's go back?"
I wouldn't say to go back because the Big East,
Okay.
even though it had some great teams and great moments throughout its history, it was always kind of a step down from the power conferences, which is where Rutgers is in now. So I don't think I would want to go back to that, but it's always cool to think about and look back at some of the old great times that were in the Big East.
I got you. I got you. Go ahead, Chris.
Big East was the original group of five.
It was in the
So,
original group of 5. You're right.
so, Alec, just got to ask, who is Rutgers' true rival?
This is a tough question because it depends on who you ask. If you ask me, I don't. At least in where are we talking just football or in general?
In general, like
In general,
I'll be honest, I don't know a ton. I know college football was born in Piscataway, New Jersey. That's about like it's the birthplace of college football. I, outside of that, and then when Rutgers won the Big East, through Shiano's first run, that's when I started paying attention to him a little bit. But outside of that, I don't know a whole lot about Rutgers traditionally and things of that nature. So who is it? Maryland? Is that truly your rival, or is it someone else?
See, it's tough because it feels like the Big Ten definitely wants Maryland to be our rival because we're the two schools from the East Coast that came in at the same time. And then if you ask people around the university, they would more so say Penn State. But based on the results on the
Oh,
field, I think it's safe to say that any school that is not, or any sport that is not football or wrestling, Penn State kind of pushes to the back burner a little bit. But yeah, it's tough because in basketball, the clear rival, not even in conference, would be Seton Hall because they have the Garden State Hardwood Classic played every year. They were
mm,
Big East rivals back in the day as well, but that doesn't translate to really any other sport other than men's basketball. So It's tough to say. I guess if I had to choose someone in conference, I would say Maryland, just because, the main source of the Rutgers Penn State battles have been in football, and those really haven't been close in recent years. So if I had to say, I think it would be Maryland, but Rutgers would definitely help themselves if they could make those matchups a little bit closer as well.
Wasn't the first game actually against, was it Princeton? Wasn't that
The
the first one?
first college
game?
football game, was
Yeah.
against Princeton.
I think you guys should just kick Princeton's butt every year.
It
Like,
would
that
be
would be
nice.
that would be
The
fun.
true
Like
kickoff classic.
the true kickoff classic, and Rutgers just dominates it every single year. Like, I'm
Yeah.
all for that. Anytime anybody can beat up on those schools, the Harvards, the Yales, the Princetons, the Browns, I'm all for it. I mean, I think it's fun. So I think
Yeah.
that would be great. That would be awesome. But okay, I can see Penn State, like I can see getting behind that rivalry if it became a little bit more competitive. But what's interesting is, when the Big Ten did with the whole protected rivalries, Penn State got nobody. They didn't even get Ohio State, which all of us were like, what? Like, okay, obviously we know the team up north, Michigan, is our rival. We all know that, right? Everybody knows that. But Penn State was a great rivalry, man. That thing was heated ever since they joined the conference. And to say, oh, it's not really a rivalry, or like, what?
Well, especially when that team up north was so bad for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah,
They were as much a rival, if not at least a more intense rival than that.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, that was so. Yeah, so I had to ask that question just because I found it incredibly disingenuous of the Big Ten to give Iowa 3 protected rivalries, and it's like, why? Just because you're in the middle of a cornfield, really? And then you gave Penn State nobody. So I found your answer incredibly interesting that you said, around campus, if you were to talk to the students, they would say probably Penn State. I can see that, actually. That's actually a really good answer. So, all right, man, give me your prediction for the season.
I'm gonna say 6-6. Like I said, I think that's their ceiling. I think 6-6 is the record they get. The big hang-up games are Maryland and Michigan State to me. I think if they win one of those games, they lose the other. Say if they beat Maryland, I think they lose to Michigan State, even though Maryland's last game of the season. And I think if they lose to Michigan State, they have the potential to beat Maryland. I mix myself up, but yeah, I do think they hit that 6-win ceiling, and I do think they make a legitimate bowl for the first time in the Shiano 2.0 era.
So you're really making Chris and I look like geniuses because we already pre-recorded what the people are about to watch after this interview, and my prediction was 5-7. His was 6-6, and so you are making us sound. You're saying everything that we kind of laid out for everybody. So that's really good, man. Where can everybody find the What's Choppin' podcast at?
Yeah, so right now it's on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/What's Choppin' Pod, all one word, that's where you can find the YouTube. And then on Spotify, if you search the What's Choppin' Podcast, that's also where you can find it. So yeah, that's where you can find it. Yeah.
We want to encourage all of you to check that out, especially if you're a Rutgers fan. Follow Alec. He's going to do great stuff over at the Big Banter Network with that podcast and previewing Rutgers sports for everybody. And Alec, I just want you to know, if you're going to say your school's name right, it's it's Rutgers, like Vince McMahon. That's how you say it. Okay, it's an Ohio thing with Rutgers. Trust me, I'm not the only one. That's how you got it. Can you do that?
Can I? Let's see. Can I get? Let's see. Rutgers.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's all right. You'll work on that.
You'll get too happy doing it.
We will have Alec back on when we play again. I didn't even ask him any questions about Ryan Day and Greg Schiano and their little tizzy last year. I was playing it nice. We were playing it nice, but I did give you a softball if you wanted to say your rivalry was Ohio State, because you could have went that way, but you didn't, Alec. You played it kind. So we'll have you back on later this season before Ohio State and Rutgers goes up against one another. Yes,
Eric, I'm not going to play it kind. You can't really be a rival if you're constantly losing by 50 points.
Well, he's not wrong there. Yeah.
You can in your heart. You can in your heart. I mean, Hey, I was Rutgers on college football, EA Sports college football one time. I played with Rutgers one time. I thought
Hey,
I'd
I'll
give
tell you
him
what.
give him a natty.
I would love to root for those guys. I really would. The Fighting Shianos.
I will say this though, Rutgers made a big mistake by being named Rutgers. You guys should be New Jersey State University. If you guys were called that, I just feel like it would go over differently. I just do. But who was Rutgers, by the way? Now we're in overtime with Alec. Who is it? Is it named after somebody? Is it like somebody's last name? Is it like Boggs University? Is that what's going on there?
I think it is. I think the person it's named after, as I'm googling it right now, I think the guy it's named
Okay,
after is Henry Rutgers, who I'm reading off of Wikipedia right now.
good old
United States
Wikipedia.
Revolutionary War hero and philanthropist from New York City. And yeah, Rutgers University was named after him, and he donated a bond which placed the college on sound financial footing.
There you go. So if you had enough money, Chris, Ohio State could have been Wilds University,
You know what?
and some might say
I
on
just want a
game day it
building.
already is.
I just want a building. That's all. I just
You
want to
want
win one of the big lottos so I can donate a building.
donate a building. Hey, Alec, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, check out his podcast, the What's Choppin Podcast. Look it up on YouTube, Spotify, and follow him. And we will have you back on very soon, Alec. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Alec, for that. That was a really great interview there. And man, I tell you, these big banter guys, Chris, they're all so good, man. I really
Yeah.
think Big Banter's got a great collection of podcasters and young talent who really want to see their podcasts grow. We've been doing this for 5 years, and some of these younger guys who are just getting started, I see the green behind their ears, but man, they're so much better than what I was 5 years ago when I was starting in my basement, man. So props to these guys, man. All right, let's talk about the Rutgers projected starting lineup here, shall we? Let's start with the offense first, Chris. All right, at quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt. He's a redshirt sophomore. At running back, Samuel Brown the fifth. He's a sophomore. So again, very young there. Offensive line, though, we've got three seniors, a junior and a sophomore. Mike Safani. You got Ireland Brown, Curtis Dunlap Jr., Holland Pierce, and Tyler Needham. At tight end, Johnny Langan, he's a senior. Wide receiver, they got a senior transfer in Nassim Brantley. You've got a redshirt senior in Christian Dremel, and then Chris Long, a junior wide receiver there as well. Chris, what do you think about this Rutgers offense, my man?
Well, they're not a team that's going to put up a lot of points, obviously, Eric. This is a team that's going to have to win with defense and sustaining drives, and they're going to have to win the close games because this is just not a high-powered offense. Wimstead, I think, can be serviceable. He's not a top five quarterback in the conference, but he can get out there and he may not win you games, but he can play in a manner to not lose the games. Um, Samuel Brown, I think there could be some excitement around Samuel Brown. Um, having a experienced offensive line should help them a lot. Johnny Langan, I really like that kid. If I'm not mistaken, he's also one of the backup quarterbacks. If I'm not mistaken, he can play just about any spot on that offense from a skill position standpoint for you. So maybe we see them do a little bit with him. You know, I don't see a whole lot to get excited about out of the receivers though. So I think that this offense definitely has its work cut out for it.
All right, let's go to the defensive side where you have transfer Isaiah Eiton, who's a senior. Aaron Lewis, I believe he's a senior as well. Ky- or Kayante,
Keontae,
Kayante Hamilton, who's a junior, and then Wesley Bailey, who's a junior. So you got an upperclassman there on the defensive line. Again, this is very similar to Illinois. You're going to have to win defensively, and you're going to need the pressure from up front. At linebackers, you got, again, very senior laden and upperclassman laden. Deion Jennings, senior. Mohamed Torre, a senior. And then Tyreen Powell, a junior. So between the defensive line and the linebackers, I do think Shiano, who's a defensive guy, Chris, has got some things to work with in his tool belt here. In the backfield, starting at cornerback, you got Robert Langerbeam, who's a junior, and Max Melton, who's a junior. And the one Rutgers player who was drafted last year was a cornerback, Christian Broswell. So you do have a nice little, um, I guess you could say, a starting of a tradition of defensive backs now playing at a higher level for them. So that is something you can hang your hat on. The third starting transfer for this team, Philip Dixon, a senior at safety, to go with the other safety at junior, Desmond Igbinosun. So, looking at that, along with special teams, kicker senior Jude uh, McAnemone or McAnamy, I don't know, McAnatomy, I don't know. That sounds like
McAdamy.
Anatomy. McAdamy? Is that how it is? I don't know. Punter Flynn Appleby or Appleby. Applebee's? Anybody? Punter? That's a great name for a punter. Flynn. It's probably Appleby, but what if it was Applebee's? Flynn Applebee's. That would be fantastic. Just saying. Defensively, Chris, this is a great. Our punter's last name's Applebee's. Rutgers. It's great. It's great. I think defensively Rutgers is going to be good. I do. They're not as good as Ohio State. They're not as good as the team up north. They're not as good as Penn State. We know that. They're 0-9 against those teams. But when they're playing the other Big 10 teams, Maryland, Michigan State, Indiana in the East, and then their crossover games, which we'll get to in just a minute, this defense is good enough to keep them in ball games. A couple things bounce their way. I think Rutgers can win some football games this year. I do. He's got them going in the right direction. He really does.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a decent defense. I'm with you. Um, it's got, like you said, it's not got a lot of flashy names that you know that people associate with big time Big Ten defense. It doesn't have a JT Tuimoloau. It doesn't have a some of the great players that we associate with Team Up North or Penn State but like you say, he's got a lot of seniors, a lot of juniors. Um, Max Melton, um, he is one of the few names that I actually do recognize on the list. Pretty decent cornerback there. So, yeah, I think that they'll have a decent defense. I think that this is a team that, like I said, their offense is serviceable. If things bounce, like you said, if the ball bounces the right way for them, I think this is a team that could flirt with bowl eligibility.
I do as well. I think this is one of those teams that you kind of throw them in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten, and you
Mhm.
say you put 4 or 5 teams in there, and 2 of them fall out 6-6 type of thing. Like it could happen. So that being said, let's dive into their schedule for this season. All right, they open the season versus Northwestern. You couldn't ask for a better team to open the season against, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Given what's happening there. They play host to Temple, who they beat last year. They host Virginia Tech. Um, obviously, I think if you beat Northwestern, I think you win against one of those 2 games against Temple or Virginia Tech. You're at Ann Arbor. That's an L. Then you host Wagner. That should be an auto W. I'm sorry. If you
yeah,
struggle against Wagner, you're not very good. At Wisconsin. That's probably going to be too much for you there. Versus Sparty. That is a coin flip game. I've been saying it
yeah, they could steal
every
that one.
even when we previewed Sparty, I said it was a coin flip game there. At Indiana, I think you can win that one. Indiana's at home. Can they find some magic? Will the quarterback be good by then? There's a lot of question marks there. Then you go into the bye week, and then this is where I think it just all falls apart. Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, Maryland to finish the season. You don't win any of those games. I'm sorry. Vegas says 4.5. I'm right around that. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because it is Shiano, and because I do think the trajectory is going in the right direction. I'll give them 5. I think they win 5, and they're just on the outside looking in at a bowl game. Chris, you're going to predict that they are one of those teams that makes it to 500 and gets 6-6. Where do you find those 6 wins at, Chris?
For me, I think it is you're going to get 3 in the non-conference. I'm going to give them Virginia Tech. A lot of people don't think so, but I'm going to give them Virginia Tech. Northwestern and Indiana, I think, are your give me games. And then, like you said, you've got games against, I think, Michigan State. Iowa's great defensively, and they should be better offensively. But if something bounces their way, you could see Iowa. And then, obviously, the health has been an issue with Maryland the last couple of years.
I was about to say if Talita
And
Tagovailoa is not playing in that game for some reason, you got a shot.
yeah, or if you see, we saw it last year where Toledo was in the game, but then they lost the big receiver. I can't remember his name last year, but they lost him. He went down early, and
Dumas?
yeah, I think that was it. So I mean, I think they can get 6 wins. I think it's a gritty team. I think that says they very much embody Shiano,
Yeah.
and this is the thing for me. If you are bowl eligible, playing in the Big Ten East, that's something to hang your hat on. I don't care where you finish in the division. If you are bowl eligible coming out of the Big Ten East, you've got something to hang on. It's very similar to saying if you were bowl eligible coming out of the SEC West, you're a pretty good team. Big
Yeah.
Ten East, I look the same way.
So I'm Brandon Jensen, lead betting analyst at Big Banter Sports. Glad to be on the show. All right, Rutgers 4.5. The over is plus 115. The under is minus 135. This is a problem for Rutgers. They draw Wisconsin and Iowa on the road out of the West, and they of course get the 3 juggernauts out of the East. That's 5 games right there that I see less than a 15% chance to win any of those games. Losing their top 3 productive most pass catchers, it's not going to be easy for Rutgers this season. I don't see 5 wins. They can maybe scratch for 4 with games against, let's see here. They've got games against Northwestern, Temple, Wagner. I think they can get 3 wins there, but I don't see 5 and I don't see 6. So I'm going to have to bet the under at minus 135. Going to have to eat the juice, but that is
I think
okay.
you make a very good point that this team very much takes on Shiano's personality. Hard nose, just like Alex podcast, um, the chopping
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Keep chopping that wood, keep grinding, keep working hard. The work ethic that Shiano brings to this players and the confidence he instills in them, especially defensively, is real. It's a real thing. Um, I do not think Rutgers is in the upper echelon, upper half of the Big Ten. If you
No,
were to rank the teams, and when we do power rankings, I think Rutgers is more towards the bottom half of the Big Ten. But I do think that there will be a game this year, somewhere along the line, where they're going to surprise somebody. Is it Iowa? Is it Maryland? Um, is it Michigan State? Is it Indiana? If they can get 2 of those or 3 of them, now you're looking at 5-7, 6-6, like you said. And so there's definitely room there for them to do that. I think that's the ceiling. I think 6-6 is
I
probably
agree.
the ceiling for them. Um, I do see a scenario where this is like a 2-10 team too. I
It
don't think it.
absolutely could
I
happen.
don't think it will be just given Shiano's coaching chops, but that is probably the floor in my opinion. And we'll
Well, and I'll
see.
tell you what it is, Eric. If they come out and get stunned by Temple, their season goes down the toilet. I think their confidence goes into crisis at that point.
Possibly. Yeah, we'll see.
That would be what would set them towards a 2-7, I believe.
Like, share, subscribe. It really does help the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. It helps the algorithm, sends this video out to more people's feeds so they can check it out and they can start saying Rutgers like we do, because it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Try it. You'll enjoy it. I promise you. Chris, try it. Go ahead.
I know.
I know you want to. All right, guys. Hey, tune in next week. We got 2 more Big Ten teams to preview. We're a little over halfway done already. See how easy that was?
That's
We're
exciting.
we're just cruising right along. Before you know it, the season's going to be here, and you're going to have all this Big Ten knowledge thanks to the OHIO podcast, myself, Chris, and all of the great guests we have brought on, just like Alec from the Big Banter Network. Until next time, Chris, go Bucks.